Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Educational AD Podcast. Before we meet today's guest, like we always do, we want to give our sponsors a shout out. Now, don't hit that fast forward button. These are all companies that I used as an athletic director. You should be using them too. So take a quick listen to our shout outs. Only take 3 minutes and then reach out to these sponsors. You'll be glad you did. Here we go. We want to say thanks to Hometown Ticketing. Hometown is the leading digital ticketing provider to schools and colleges. And if you go to hometownticketing.com, their team is going to show you how to set up and sell your tickets online. Hometown is digital ticketing that offers more support, more security, more customization. Go to hometownticketing.com. They're going to help you make the best online ticketing solution. We also want to thank Vital Signs Wall of Fame. Go to their website, vitalsignswalloffame.com. Check out their interactive touchscreen video consoles. It's a great way to show off your school record boards, your school's Hall of Fame, or simply showcase your school's diverse history and your proudest moments. That's vitalsignswalloffame.com. We also want to say thanks to Huddle. Go to huddle.com and change the way you see the game. I used Huddle as a football coach for years, but when I became an athletic director, I made sure our school was a Huddle school, and our coaches just loved the tools that Huddle provided that let them coach our kids up to their highest level. Go to huddle.com, join the 8 million users, and turn your school into a Huddle school. We also want to say thanks to Sideline Interactive indoor score tables and video boards. Go to sidelineinteractive.com. Schedule a live web demo, see their scoreboards and their score tables in action. Probably one of the best purchases I ever made. Go to sidelineinteractive.com for more information. We also want to say thanks to Home Campus. Home Campus is a platform that I used every single day as an athletic director for things like scheduling, student athlete eligibility and clearance. That's something you do every day. Uploading digital forms, signatures, working with parents and coaches. Go to homecampus.com. You're going to be glad that you did. That's homecampus.com. We also want to thank Gipper. Gipper's the official social media graphics solution for our podcast, and it's going to be your solution too to creating world-class content for your school's social media channel. It's going to help you celebrate your athletes and promote your teams. Gipper's used and trusted by over 3,000 athletic programs across the country. It's professional graphic design made simple. Go to Gipper.com to get started. We also want to say thanks to SnapRaise. If you're looking for the best online fundraising platform, you found it. Go to snapraise.com. We used it at my school with great success. Coaches loved it. Parents loved it. It works. Go to SnapRaise. You can also check out their other platforms like Snap Sponsor, Snap Store, FanX. But if you're looking for a fundraising platform, go to snapraise.com. Finally, we want to say thanks to Athletic Surveys by LifeTrack. Go to athleticsurveys.com. They're going to create a custom survey that's going to let you take the pulse of your student athletes, your coaches, and your parents. Athletic directors already hear back from the complainers, and Athletic Surveys will connect you to that group, but they're also going to connect you to the 98% that support your program. That's a tremendously valuable tool to have when you're talking with a frustrated parent or your principal or even your school board. Go to athleticsurveys.com. Let them help you take your athletic program from good to great. Hey, welcome back, everybody, to another episode on the Educational AD Podcast. Got a really cool guest today. It's Mark Koesterer. He is the founder. He's also a contributing writer for an organization called the Players NIL, all about name, image, and likeness. We're going to take a deep dive into all things NIL and Mark's site, but he's got a tremendous background in athletics. He's coming out of Philadelphia. So, Mark Koesterer, welcome to the Educational AD Podcast.
Jake, nice to meet you, and thank you very much. I'm looking forward to it.
Well, you and I were talking a little bit before we started recording. 2 years ago, maybe 3 years ago, especially at the high school level, NIL was something that was off in the distance. But hey, it's 2024 and it's here. It's here to stay, and it's growing. And kind of like the college landscape, it's sometimes changing on a daily basis. But before we get into that, we always like to let our listeners have a chance to get to know our guests. So give us that quick bio. Where were you born? Where'd you grow up? Maybe take us up through your own high school and college days, and then we'll take a break there and come back. But what's the Mark Koesterer origin story?
Well, it's a great question, and I love to share it because I'm very proud of it. I was the son of two educators. My father was a junior high gym teacher and a coach at some point in his life. My mom was an elementary school teacher. So I grew up in an education family, oldest of three children. During my teenage years, I started to realize that, I had some aptitude for athletics. And my father instilled upon me the first principle of our business, and that is that I could use athletics to better my life. And I had no idea where that would take me. I don't even think he dreamed or imagined the places that I've gone. But the point was to use athletics to create opportunities. In high school, we talk about college, right? How can you get to a school that you might not normally be able to get into? Where will it take you? The people that you meet, the experiences that you have. So I was a decent high school athlete, played on some really good teams. I was recruited to play football at a small school in Michigan called Hillsdale College.
Oh, yeah.
It's a Division II football at the time, and was good Division II football. And I just had the best experience of my life. I think many people in your audience participated in athletics, perhaps played in college, and best friends of my life, incredible life experiences. That career came to an end in my last game, as most Division II athletes do, and married, moved back to the East Coast, started to raise my family in Syracuse, New York, which is upstate in central New York. And it was there that I started to develop the second principle of our business, and that was, how can you use athletics to better the lives of the people around you? How can you make a difference? And I was able to do that. I was a community member, created a youth sports program, started a high school program that's put 200 kids in college. I have 5 children of my own, 4 Division I athletes in the house, and really enjoyed the experience as a parent, as a community member, as a community coach. When my kids were grown and gone, I got a chance to move to Los Angeles, where I became the CEO and the president of a company called Sports Studio. And it was there that we launched a first of its kind business. We produced all the sports content in Hollywood. So the scripted sports for television shows, movies, commercials, feature films. And we did that in licensed partnership with the NFL, NBA, MLB. So for 13 plus years, we produced every commercial that you saw on television that involved sports.
I definitely want to have you go into that, but let's jump back, to your own high school experience. I think you and I are probably around the same age. I might be a little bit older than you, but growing up, were you in a small town high school? Was it a big, public high school? What was that experience like?
A little bit of both. It was a small town that had combined with another town to create a pretty large public high school. I think we had 750 kids in our graduating class. It was in the middle of Long Island, so a populous place, lots of athletes. It was a lot of great athletes, and the time was the late 70s. And it was a great experience. I actually spent my sophomore year in high school 5 hours away, as my father, who was a teacher, went back on sabbatical and got an advanced degree in athletic training. And my father was the first certified high school athletic trainer in the state of New York. And it was part of the committee that got that approved and licensed in the state of New York. So really deep involvement with athletics throughout high school.
Oh, that is so cool. You mentioned earlier about athletics creating opportunities, and whether it's going on and playing collegiately. I had a small college football and track experience, but I joke injuries and the lack of talent kept me out of the NFL. But the the relationships, the coaches that you have, the relationships that you build with your teammates, I think those are lessons that later on create opportunities. Can you think back to a moment in either in high school or maybe in college that at the time you really didn't think too much of it, but now looking back, you can say, "Hey, that moment was significant." Anything come to mind for you?
Yeah, I think there's two. I think, most kids are really vulnerable in terms of leadership in the junior high level, so that sixth, seventh, eighth, ninth grade level. I came from a very stable home, incredible parents, as I said, educators, had every opportunity to be successful. But I think in junior high at that age, there's opportunities to get in trouble too, right? There's kids that are going in the wrong direction. There's social habits, there's personal, professional influences that maybe are not all positive, and today with social media even greater. But I did have a gym teacher that pulled me aside and said, hey, I think you got a future in athletics. Make sure you make the right decisions. And I think it was a good advice. And then when you get to college, I think you're really influenced there by your college coaches, because you kind of grown up a little bit. You're thinking more like an adult, not completely, but more like an adult. You're thinking about your career. You're thinking about your life habits. And, my college coach's words echo in my head pretty regularly. So I think both of those time frames, when I was perhaps vulnerable to making bad decisions, I had great leadership, which I really appreciate.
Oh, absolutely. I can relate to that, almost word for word. We had a young coach, or I had a coach when I was young that would say, don't do anything tonight. Usually it was Thursday night, that's going to get in the way of you enjoying Friday night on the football field or on the basketball court, whatever it was. And just his way of telling us, don't be a stupid junior high or high school kid. Very cool stuff. For our listeners, once again, our guest today is Mark Koesterer. He's the founder of an organization called the Players NIL. We're going to get into that and a lot more, but let's take our first break. Please stay with us. We're coming back. This is the Educational AD Podcast. We want to say thanks to our good friends at Hometown Ticketing, the leading digital ticketing provider to schools and colleges. Go to hometownticketing.com. Their team is going to show you how to set up and sell tickets online, not just for your athletic events, but things like school plays, concerts, school dances, even graduation. And here's the best part. Every school gets assigned a dedicated client success manager who's going to provide you hands-on support every step of the way. That's every step of the way. Go to hometownticketing.com. It's digital ticketing that offers more. Welcome back, everybody. Once again, our guest is Mark Koesterer. He's the founder of the Players NIL. Mark, you were talking about your post-college career and how your journey had taken you to Los Angeles. Share with our listeners. That sounded like a really cool endeavor that you were involved with.
Well, I'd always been involved with athletics, as I described, from a personal and standpoint, but never as a professional. And some guys that I grew up with in New York were in Los Angeles, and they were acquiring small businesses to build out a portfolio of entertainment products. And they invited me to come out. In my first 2 years in Los Angeles, I ran a cut and sew sewing shop. I had 40 sewers where we made athletic uniforms for high school and colleges, and did some private label work and did some development work for companies like Under Armour, Reebok, Nike, did some work with the NFL. Really learned a lot about the athletic apparel business, design work, worked with a lot of creative people. It was really a great experience. In 2000, that was in 2008. In 2010, I was asked to become the leader of the whole company. And we had two divisions. We had this athletic apparel manufacturing division, and we had a Hollywood division. And the Hollywood division had been in business since 1979, supplying wardrobe to Hollywood movies. The first movie that they ever worked on was North Dallas 40 with Nick Nolte and Matt Davis in 1979. Those of us of a certain age remember that movie. But the history of the company was Any Given Sunday, Replacements, Miracle, We Are Marshall, and they provided all the uniforms. So my manufacturing division provided uniforms for Hollywood and for high school and colleges. I then became the leader of the entire operation. And it's a great story. The first day on the job, I sat in the corner office. I called my father and said I made it to the corner office, of which he knew nothing about because he was a junior high gym teacher and wanted nothing to do with administration. And as I hung up the phone, almost literally, a FedEx delivery person walked in and handed me an envelope, which was a cease and desist letter from the National Football League, the NFL. And the company had been supplying uniforms for commercials for the NFL for years without a license. And there was no licensing. The NFL had kind of an open book about who supplied uniforms. If you remember back in the day, there were many uniform manufacturers in the NFL. Champion, Starter, right? Reebok became the first licensee. And so Logo Athletic in Indianapolis, those kinds of companies. So basically, we were shut down from operating about 65% of our revenue. I took that opportunity, got on a plane, went to New York, sat down with in-house counsel at the National Football League on Park Avenue, and we hammered out the first ever license relationship. It wasn't that they didn't want us to do the work, they just wanted to control it. And they wanted to have some say into who was using their product on camera. And we became a great partner for them. We became the eyes and the ears, the fun police, if you will, in Hollywood, so that anyone using NFL and eventually NBA, MLB, US soccer marks on camera, logos, team uniforms, designs, had to come through us. And it was really a great experience. And it really is a big part of my current operation business, is that I learned about marketing, I learned about partnerships with licensees, group licensing, agents, agencies, production companies, really a great foundation in sports marketing.
Well, what a cool job. And again, kind of, almost out of the chute, you were still young. Well, you mentioned North Dallas 40. That was right. I just graduated from college. Again, you heard about my non-existent NFL career, but I was playing for a minor league football team in Portland, Oregon. And I've got a picture in my scrapbook somewhere. In fact, I think it might even be on my Facebook page. I'm standing on the sideline with a buddy in uniform, and I've got my little Nick Nolte hat on. Just wow, that is so cool. I'm jealous already. Um, what what sort of opportunities did that open up for you, beyond, what you were doing with apparel? Is that what kind of led to the NIL, or was that something extra? And I don't want to get ahead of myself because we're going to talk about the NIL, your NIL platform later, but how was that back then?
Yeah, I think apparel was going through, sports uniforms was going through a major transition. It was, 2010, Nike, Under Armour was growing fast, Reebok, Adidas, these brands were starting to get involved with licensing in the college level. Before that, the colleges had kind of done what they wanted, and maybe even teams within the athletic department had done what they wanted in terms of apparel licensing. I think uniform design was changing dramatically, right? We were going from, cotton jerseys and cotton t-shirts to Under Armour, performance-based fabrics as base layers, and even performance-based fabrics as outside uniforms. The lettering changed, the logos changed. I think sports marketing started to take over. Teams started to use their logos and their athletes and their sports brand in promotional purposes, whether it be selling season tickets or generating money. Television was growing, the internet was growing. So the small, sleepy college athletic program that really was under the radar had an opportunity to change. And we changed as well. We created some really unique uniform designs. We did some great work with youth programs. We did some great development work with the Under Armour college athletic program in lacrosse and baseball and football. And so learned a lot about marketing and how uniforms could be part of that. And it was really a great experience.
Can you think of an example? And again, I hope I'm not going out in the weeds on this one, of, working with a college program back then that maybe had, a very old school traditional design, one color cloth, one color ink for the numbers and logo, that you were able to sort of take to that next level and create something that their players, I assume, would really enjoy and want to wear. Anything stick out for you?
Yeah, we were one of the nation's leading development companies. So not only did we produce uniforms for the teams, as I mentioned, but we did a lot of development work. So we did prototypes and early rendition because we had the knowledge, we had the design capability. We worked with Nike and Under Armour in particular. We were there when Oregon really started to blossom in terms of the uniforms. When Chip Kelly was the coach and it became a national name, they were always a big brand. But when Nike got involved with the uniforms, I think it changed the marketing dramatically. At one time, we were told that the athletes going to play football at Oregon could wear a different uniform every game of their career, all 4 years. That was the combinations that they had. I think we were told they had 11 different color helmet schemes. Mm-hmm. Okay. So way different from when I grew up, where we wore the same helmet maybe for 2 or 3 straight years, right? Maybe it got reconditioned in the summer, maybe it didn't, I don't know. Yeah. But and then Under Armour tried to copy that. So we were involved with some of the great designs at the University of Maryland, at Pepperdine, Missouri, And I think it was the early 2010s was really when sports marketing and uniform design really collided. So those are a couple examples.
Well, I think you probably know this. I grew up, I was born and raised in Oregon, started my career there. And I remember that year when they, started having they had the new O instead of the old, U of O. Although it was kind of cool to see in the bowl game, Oregon did wear their traditional logos and colors. I thought that was a nice nod to the past. Why, boy, I'm even more jealous now. Um, for our listeners, our guest today is Mark Koesterer. Tremendous background in sports, as we've heard, but he's also the founder of an organization called the Players NIL. We're going to take another break, but when we come back, we're going to talk about how this organization formed, what it does, and why it's important to you as an athletic director or a coach listening. So let's go and take that quick break, but we're coming back. This is the Educational AD Podcast. We want to thank our good friends at Vital Signs Wall of Fame for their support. Go to their website, which is vitalsignswalloffame.com. Check out their interactive touch screen. That's right, touch screen video consoles. It's a great way to show off your school record boards for all the teams, for all the sports, or your school's Hall of Fame, or simply share your school's diverse history and your proudest moments. Go to vitalsignswalloffame.com, mention the podcast, you'll get yourself a nice discount. That's Vital Signs Wall of Fame. Let them help you bring your school's legacy to life. We also want to say thanks to our good friends at Huddle. Go to huddle.com and change the way you see the game. As a football coach, I used Huddle for years, but when I became an athletic director, I made sure that our school was a Huddle school, and our coaches just loved the tools that Huddle provided that let them coach our kids up to their highest level. Go to huddle.com, join the 8 million users, and turn your school into a Huddle school. Welcome back, everybody, to the Educational AD Podcast. Mark, you've shared your career with us, your early career. And again, as I mentioned, I'm kind of jealous of all the cool things you got to do. But let's talk about the Players NIL. Take our listeners through, kind of the story. How did it get started? Why did you get it started? And, kind of the process where you're at right now.
Sure. So I told you a little bit about what we did at the Sports Studio was the name of the company. In June of 2021, we sold that business, and I was unsure what I was going to do. I was going to move on and do something different. I'd been there for 15 years. And name, image, and likeness was temporarily authorized by the courts in June or July of 2021, so 30 days later. And of course, it seemed natural that I would get involved to some degree. It was my background, it was my passion, it was kind of, in my wheelhouse. And I spent about 5 or 6 months, Jake, talking to people, trying to understand it. It was the early days, still the early days, but it was the early days of NIL. And I think a lot of people had thoughts and opinions, most of which we were wrong about where it was going and how it was going to be enacted. But the one thing that I noticed that was consistent with what I'd seen in Hollywood, and that was adults, whether they be agents, lawyers, brands, taking advantage of uneducated athletes that had really no right to sign contracts that they were doing or partner with people that they were doing. They really were making mistakes. And remember, the second principle of my business is how do you use athletics to better the lives of the people around you? And I had done that at Sports Studio. I created an award-winning internship program that hired 26 kids. I had hired 13 of them full-time. 6 of them now own their own businesses. 2 of them are executives in $1 billion sports equipment business today. And so I had success, and my legacy was intact in terms of, when I challenge people in my talking to young people is, if you disappeared today, would anyone care? What have you done? What have you done that didn't serve just yourself? How could you give back? And I think as athletes, we have that right and we have that responsibility to give back and to say thank you for all of the great opportunities that have been created because of our participation in sports and athletics. And so I decided that the educational component of NIL was going to be something that probably needed to be addressed. And I started to write a business plan around educating young people on the basic life skills that NIL affords you that could make NIL not just a 4-year thing, but a 40-year thing. So really the life skills course based on the NIL platform that can launch you to all kinds of career and professional and personal opportunities down the road.
NIL's been around now, as you mentioned, for a few years at the college level, but it's becoming more of a thing, if you will, for high school. And we're going to get into that. But um, how have you seen it used in a positive way, say at a college level? And I know you probably work more with high school, but you know, I think a lot of people are saying it's out of control and it's worse than when it was supposedly illegal boosters paying. Now it's legal. You know, have you seen a good example of NIL at the college level?
Hundreds, if not thousands, of good examples. But I want to make a clear point to your audience, Jake. The NCAA did not do us any favors by opening up Pandora's box and saying, go for it, NIL business, with no guardrails, no guidelines, no restrictions, no guidance. Okay. And as I've learned throughout life, when you marry money, power, ego, and athletics, trouble ensues. And that's what's happened in the first 2 years. Let's be real clear. We have a collision point today between two forces that no one foresaw. One is name, image, and likeness being used as pay for play. Okay. And let's be honest, in the Power 5 schools and the revenue generating sports, I have to change that. It's now Power 4 schools, but in those large conferences, right, we're using NIL and payment as a recruitment incentive, as an enticement, as a retention tool. You combine that with the transfer portal, which no one foresaw coming together, and you have chaos. You have free agency, you have no salary cap, and you have 1-year contracts. It's even more freedom than the professional leagues. And so I'm out talking about real, REAL, NIL. Transfer portal, collectives paying athletes pay for play does not equal NIL. That is not NIL. That is pay for play and transfer portal used for recruitment and retention. Real NIL is athletes who are not part of that system. So whether it be mid-major schools, Division II, Division III, high school, non-revenue sports, Olympic sports, where they're actually having to create value and create a brand that they can leverage for future opportunities. And that's what I coach, is real NIL. I don't have much involvement at the high level because those kids don't care about social media. They're not getting paid for social media. They're not getting paid for appearances. They're not getting paid to sign autographs. They get paid to win games. Let's just be clear about that.
No, and that's kind of why I asked that question. I wanted, it to come from a pro about those two things, the NIL and the transfer portal. We've had a number of college athletic directors, let's say, small college to medium-sized college ADs on that talk very glowingly about some of the NIL programs that their student athletes have created, and a lot of them are women athletes in let's say those non-major sports. So it can work. And we're going to take another break. When we come back, we're going to talk about how you can help make it work for our listeners at the high school level. So one more time, our guest today is Mark Koesterer. Tremendous athletic background, but he's the founder of the Players NIL. And when we come back, we're going to, put him on the spot. We're going to ask him, why this is something that you as a listener should be getting in touch with him about. So let's take that break. This is the Educational AD Podcast. We want to say thanks to our good friends at Sideline Interactive Indoor Score Tables and Video Boards. Go to their website, sidelineinteractive.com, and you can schedule a live web demo to see their score tables and their score boards in action. Their products not only generate income for your athletic department, but they also create the ultimate game day experience for your student athletes. We've got a Sideline Interactive Indoor Score Table in our gym, probably one of the best purchases I ever made. Of course, we use it for home games, but we also use it for pep rallies, for signing ceremonies. It's tremendously versatile, and their customer service is just outstanding. Once again, go to sidelineinteractive.com. Schedule that live web demo today. Sidelineinteractive.com. We also want to say thanks to Home Campus. Home Campus is a platform that I used every single day as an athletic director. We used it for scheduling. We used it for athletic eligibility and clearance. That's something you do every day. Um, Uploading digital forms and signatures, contacting parents, working with coaches. Again, Home Campus is something that's going to make your life so much easier as an athletic director. And get started, all you have to do is go to homecampus.com. That's homecampus.com. Check them out today. Hey, welcome back, everybody. We're visiting today with Mark Koesterer, the founder of the Players NIL. Mark, I think we're up to 27, 28 states maybe that have their state activities association has created an NIL policy. I'm not sure how many student athletes are involved with that policy at the high school level, but what are some things that the Players NIL can provide for high school student athletes, for their coaches, their parents, and for our athletic directors listening? Why should they reach out and get in touch with you and begin using your services?
Great. First of all, I think the updated number is 34 states, Jake.
Oh,
So
wow. Okay.
yeah, and climbing, and it'll be 50 in the not too distant future. So for sure, it's I tell people all the time, the wave is coming. So as an athletic administrator in high school level, we should start swimming. Look, again, we're of a certain age where we grew up playing ball on the playground at the end of the street, in someone's driveway. Maybe if we were lucky, we got to go to a high school field and play something, in our off time or in the summertime. Maybe we had a high school basketball team that played in a summer league, but we didn't have AAU. We didn't have travel teams. We didn't have year-round sports-specific training. We definitely didn't have trainers. We did athletic, psychological, physical, mental coaches. We didn't have all the things that kids have today. Whether that's good or bad, I'm not sure, but it's different. And parents' involvement in this has grown over the last 40 plus years, and I've witnessed it. And I think NIL is one of those things that's inevitable. You mentioned that the genie's out of the bottle. It's here to stay in some form or another. Are there things that are negative or potentially dangerous about it? Absolutely, 100%. Are there positive opportunities? 1,000%. And that's what we're here to coach and what we're here to teach. And we educate parents, we educate high school athletes, we educate high school administrators, we educate local brands about how to use this opportunity. Name, image, and likeness, NIL as it's called, I believe is inaccurate. It's really not the best acronym or best name for what we're talking about. What we're talking about is athlete empowerment, sports marketing, individual brand development, social media influencing, athlete influencing. We're talking about how modern business is conducted. And I don't care if you're in the insurance business, if you're in the healthcare business, if you sell auto parts, whatever business you're in, whatever industry you're in, if you're in the podcast business, Jake, you use social media to promote your business. And you're building a brand every time you post on that. For those of us in business currently, maybe one of the greatest tools is LinkedIn in terms of connecting with people, telling your story, creating opportunities for networking. I think that being an athlete is a privilege and a responsibility, but it's also a tremendous honor and an opportunity. Remember, fan is short for fanatic. You know that athletes have a 3 to 5 times greater engagement rate on social media than traditional influencers. That's a huge difference because their fan base is excited about their story, following them. If you're a local high school athlete and you're all conference or you're all league or all state or all American, if you're going D2, D3, NAIA, Division I, mid-major, or Power 5 sports, you're a celebrity. You were written up in the paper. You were interviewed on the radio or perhaps the television. You maybe won some awards at the end of the year banquet. Why not use that to create lifelong opportunities? I think NIL, as we talked about, with the collision of transfer portal and collectives paying pay for play, has gotten a bad name. But real NIL is an opportunity for young people to create these life skills, business development, marketing, launch a business, financial literacy, all the things that we teach, community service and philanthropy. Use all of these to create opportunities. Remember, first lesson, first pillar of our business, how to use athletics to better your life. And I think NIL can be part of that. Now, I do want to say that I understand that high school athletic administrators have a lot on their plate today because of all the social pressures we just talked about. It's more than it was 20, 30 years ago. You have parents, you have travel teams, you have social media, you have fundraising and budgetary issues that perhaps you didn't have some years ago. And NIL is just one more headache, as many athletic directors have described it to me. But I think it's one that you can't avoid. And I think it's one that we owe our student athletes as leaders, as administrators, as educators. We owe them the opportunity to take advantage of this. And that's what I'm here to do, is to support that.
You know, you mentioned one of the pillars, and on your website, the Players NIL, you talk about the 5 pillars. Can you go ahead and share those quickly with our listeners?
Absolutely. So these are the pillars that I designed in creating this company, and they come from my, before mentioned life in sports and business, and really my life as a parent and life as a community servant, life as an administrator of youth programs, and as a CEO in Hollywood. First pillar is digital marketing. And we talk about this in terms of, it's not just your friends and family on Instagram. It's not pictures of grandma's Thanksgiving turkey. It's not pictures of you at the beach with your friends or at the swimming pool. It's how do you tell a story and how do you build a brand about who you really are, Jake? Jake, the football player in college or track athlete, are you interested in music? Are you interested in art, science, fashion, travel? Who are you as a person? And how do you tell that story to create a greater following? That's pillar 1. Pillar 2 is, once you've created that following, how do you leverage that with brands to create opportunities, whether it be internships, job opportunities, pay for play in terms of social media posts and NIL opportunities. So how do you leverage that as an influencer? Like it or not, the Kardashians have changed the world, and influencer marketing is part of every major corporation and small business in the United States. That's pillar 2. Pillar 3 is a little bit more technical. What are the compliance issues, the state laws? What are the basic contract concepts that you need to understand before you sign something? What are lifetime rights? What is intellectual property? What are net payment terms? And I've seen so many athletes, ill-advised or even not advised, signing contracts that are really in favor of the brand and not equal or even in favor of the athlete. That's pillar 3. Pillar 4 is my father's pillar. It's community service and philanthropy. How do you use that to give back, right? This is our right and responsibility to use our position, our celebrity, if you will, to contribute to the people around us. Pillar 5 and the final pillar is financial literacy, which I think most young people should take a financial literacy course. Basic concepts about money management, how to invest, what to stay away from, what is, basic 101 financial literacy. What is interest rates? What compounding interest? What's a mortgage? What's a loan? What's an investment look like? And so those are the 5 pillars really of life skills that we teach in our program.
Again, let's go and do this right now. We'll do it at the end of the podcast. But if one of our listeners wanted to reach out and find out more about NIL in general and some of the things that you can do for them at the Players NIL, what's the best way that they can get a hold of you?
Well, our website is theplayersnil.com. You can follow me on social media at the Players NIL or on LinkedIn. I'm there, Mark Koesterer. So, follow me. I post pretty regularly about newsworthy stories and opinions and thoughts and great examples of positive, real NIL. So theplayersnil.com.
All right. And I'm glad you mentioned that. We're going to take another break, but when we come back, I'm going to ask you to share some of those positive high school NIL stories and maybe where you think NIL might be going here in the next year or so. We don't want to get much beyond that because things can change. But for listeners, Mark Koesterer is our guest. He is the founder of the Players NIL. We're coming back with more, so stay with us. This is the Educational ED Podcast. We want to thank our good friends at Gipper for their support. Gipper is the official social media graphic solution for the podcast. And if you go to Gipper.com Their team is going to help you to create world-class marketing content for your school's social media channel. Your kids are on social media, and if you're not promoting your athletes and celebrating your teams, you're really missing out on a great opportunity. Gipper's used and trusted by over 3,000 high school and college athletic programs across the country. It's professional graphic design made simple. How simple? Even I can do it. Go to Gipper.com. Mention the podcast, you'll get a nice discount. That's Gipper.com. We also want to say thanks to our friends at SnapRaise. Have you ever spent weeks and weeks on a fundraiser and got little, if any, return? Well, stop right here. Go to snapraise.com. Hands down, the best online fundraiser out there. We used it at our school with tremendous success. Our coaches loved it. Our parents loved it. It works. Go to snapraise.com. You can also see their other great platforms like Snap Manage and Snap Store. But SnapRaise is the fundraising platform you should be using. Go to snapraise.com to get started. Welcome back, everybody, to the Educational AD Podcast. Mark, we've talked, and you've done a great job about explaining how, NIL at the high school level is a lot different than what I think the image a lot of people have of NIL from those, big, $1 million transfer portal contracts, if you will. Can you share some examples of how you guys have helped NIL impact some teams, some athletes at the high school level? And then I want to hear your thoughts about where you think NIL is going to be going.
Sure. So remember, we're talking about REAL, REAL, NIL, which I think applies to every high school athlete. And by the way, I think, one of the things that we're preaching is how to use NIL as a sponsorship tool, as a sports marketing tool for high school athletic directors. We talked a little bit about the pressures on the programs financially or in the community, whether they're trying to get approval for a new field or lights, or they're trying to raise money for those things, or they're trying to build a new uniform package, or they're trying to, upgrade their buses for travel for long distance, all of these types of things. We're talking about athlete empowerment as influencers. And we have worked with high school athletic directors across the country to use athletes to promote the high school athletic program. And there's all kinds of benefits that come from that. The youth in the community get connected through social media. They get connected through the community service and philanthropy efforts that we make, which feeds your athletic program. You have a youth program that feeds your junior high and your high school program. That's very positive for the community. Those of us on this podcast probably believe in the power of athletics. That's why we're here. Fundraising. Let's empower athletes to become influencers to raise money for specific causes that we just talked about. Okay. Community relations, right? Let's engage with the local businesses. Let's engage with the local community to come to games, to support us, to be sponsors in our programs, to help fundraise for specific causes, and just general community service in the educational part of it too. Let's use this NIL education as should be a required course in high school, in my opinion. These 5 pillars that we teach, every young person should be given some instruction on these things. This is the wave of the future of how business is performed, and the pitfalls of social media, right? The downfalls of making bad decisions in social media, or contracting or working with brands that are not authentic to you. And so, look, the growth of youth sports, no one could slow it down. And I think the growth of NIL, which we'll talk about at the end, no one's going to be able to slow it down. So the wave is coming. Let's start swimming with education. That's my speech.
Talk, if you can, for a moment to that cynical athletic director that might be listening. Maybe he's listening in Florida, maybe in another state, that's just saying, "Oh, this is not going to work at my school. It doesn't have any application." Can you share an example of how you've seen it work and you've helped it work at a particular school?
Sure. We've worked in particular with a small rural school in the state of New York. And when I first approached the athletic director, he said, "We don't have any Division I athletes here. We're not interested." Remember, what he's been told is transfer portal and collective payments, pay for play, is what NIL is, right? So I don't blame him. That's what he's been told by the news. When we sat down and we talked about things that we just mentioned, the opportunities to create life skills, to empower athletes, to help his athletic program, and for those going to college to have a running start so that when they got there, even at the D2 or D3 level, even at the non-revenue sport like soccer, softball, lacrosse, swimming and diving, track and field, how these athletes could use this to make money, to create opportunities. Look, when I grew up, I painted houses and mowed lawns, right? Today, you can make money as an athlete 12 months a year as an influencer. And so the example that we use is the local diner, right? The local breakfast place. You know, we have a high school athlete. She's a softball player. She's hoping to play in college. But more importantly, she's the leader of our softball team in this small community. And it has a good softball program. There's a lot of young girls that participate throughout their lives to hopefully play at the high school level. And she goes to the local diner and she sees that there's a picture of her up on the wall. And Dave's Diner, if you will, has celebrated the fact that she's a customer. And that's awesome. And it's great. And she goes there on Saturdays with her friends and she orders a cheese omelet with a bagel on the side. Plain bagel with butter, please. And she sits there and she realizes that the diner is using her name, image, and likeness to promote his business. And so she addresses it with Dave and she says, look, I love that. I appreciate all the support. How about if we start a business here? I'm going to tell all my friends, I only have 700 followers on Instagram, but all 700 live within 10 miles of this town, right? They're all my friends and family in this community. I'm going to post once a week the special at Dave's Diner on Saturday morning at 10 a.m. Will you pay me $25 a week to post? That's $100 a month. And Dave says, that seems like a good deal. So the next week she goes in and the restaurant is full. Dave's Diner is full because her social circle had become an influence to this community. And now he's selling cheese omelets and bagels, plain bagels with butter. She goes to the next level. She says, Dave, okay, we did this. This is great. You're making money. I made money. Thank you very much. Let's do a special. I'm going to bring in the whole team, but let's do a special giveaway to everyone that comes. And so they create a relationship where she becomes an affiliate marketer. And now she gets a piece of every meal that he sells during that special time. And she makes another $45 a month on that. She's now making $145 a month in high school for being a softball player before she ever goes to college. Take that model, apply it to the insurance company, the car wash, the landscaping company, the local grocery store, the local car dealership, the restaurant, the sushi restaurant, the pizza shop, whatever it may be. That's what real NIL is. She's learning how to market herself, how to build a brand. She's learning about business. She's making money. She has to be responsible. Now we talk about financial literacy. She now can go to Dave's Diner and create a camp so that she can work with the youth in the community. Dave's Diner sponsors a softball camp. She can make more money. She can give back. Community service and philanthropy. It all works together.
Yeah, I've just I want to phrase this properly. You probably have a better idea of this than I do. In Florida, not the state high school association, but the state legislature has created a system. It's been in place for, I don't know, 7, 8 years, maybe more, where students are allowed to transfer literally every season. And we have a number of examples of high school students, student athletes. They'll play, let's say, football in the fall at school A. When football's over, they'll transfer to school B and play basketball. And when that's over in the spring, they'll transfer to school C and play baseball or run track. And it's been going on for a number of years. And it's the state legislature that has allowed this rule. It's a state law. Nobody, I don't think there's a single AD or coach in the state of Florida that likes this rule. Okay. And now, one of my questions is, how many states, other states, are you aware of where this sort of situation exists? You know, whether it's from the state association or the state legislature. And then my question is, you know, we're getting into that crystal ball, as Florida is considering creating an NIL policy. Right now, it's just, no, you can't do it. Do you see that having, I'll say, an impact on high school sports in Florida? So
Yeah.
there's two questions for you.
Well, first of all, on the transfer subject, I had never heard that. So that's new to me. My understanding and my experience in New York, and actually I have a friend whose son got penalized for transferring schools in the state of Michigan in high school. There's pretty restrictive rules on that, in terms of, residency, for instance, I think is a big requirement. Although people get apartments and have PO boxes and, but there are, a number of people that have been caught, breaking those rules. So I'm not familiar with that Florida rule. It does seem kind of crazy to me. It doesn't seem like it really benefits the kid. That's what would concern me. I don't think the student athlete really benefits from that transfer. And then that creates this transfer mentality, which we see in college where they're transferring 2 and 3 times. What about adversity? What about working through the problems that you don't get along with a coach or you don't like the team isn't winning? How about, all the life skills that we're supposed to be teaching in sports? So that's the first thing. In terms of the high school level in Florida and the 16 plus states perhaps that don't have it, it's coming. We know that there's roughly around 500,000 athletes at the collegiate level. That's NAIA, D3, D2, D1. We know that there's about 8 million athletes in high school. It's my opinion that NIL will be bigger in high school than it is in college. It's just more kids. And you have more crazy parents, right? You have parents that are going to want little Johnny or little Sally to play at the highest level. And they're going to think that they're going to, create NIL brands that are going to help them in their athletic career and their college decision process. My belief is that we should start NIL education as juniors in high school. It's when you start your college recruiting process, you start your college decision-making process. It's when you start to have to be responsible outside of the house. And that way, when you get to college, you have a brand, you have a footprint that you can leverage on day one in college. But my opinion is that it's coming. Athletic directors need to understand what the pitfalls are. More importantly, they need to understand and embrace what the opportunities are. I realize it's one more thing on their desk. I realize it's one more headache, but I think it's going to be a bigger headache if you try and avoid it and don't pay attention to it.
Yeah, and again, we've got a front row seat for the next couple of years to see how this impacts the state and other states as well. I'm fascinated by it. There's some aspects that I just don't like at all, but the example that you gave about the young student athlete partnering with the local restaurant, I think that's a great way to do it. But again, we could spend the rest of the day talking about this. We're not quite done. We always wrap up our podcast with a segment called the Athletic Director Toolbox. Now, you're not an athletic director, but you certainly know your way around the world of athletics. So we're going to take our final break, hear from Athletic Surveys, who sponsor this segment. When we come back, I'm going to ask Mark to send out a brand new athletic director on their very first job, but I'm only going to let him put 3 things in the toolbox. So let's take that final break. When we come back, we're going to see what Mark puts into his new athletic director toolbox. Please stay with us. We want to say thanks to Athletic Surveys for sponsoring the AD Toolbox segment of our podcast. Athletic Surveys are a quick, easy, and an affordable way for you to collect comprehensive data from your stakeholders. Athletic directors already hear back from the complainers, the people who want to gripe about everything. Athletic Surveys will connect you to that group, but they're also going to connect you to the 98% of your parents and student athletes that support your program. And that's a tremendously valuable tool to have when you're talking to a frustrated parent, maybe your principal, or even your school board. Go to athleticsurveys.com. They're going to create a custom survey that'll let you take the pulse of your players, your parents, even your coaches. That's athleticsurveys.com. Well, it's that time of the podcast. We have been visiting today with Mark Koesterer. Great interview. He's the founder of the Players NIL. We're going to give out that contact information again, but right now I'm going to challenge Mark to send out a brand new athletic director on their first job, but I'm only going to let him put 3 things in the toolbox. So, Mark, what 3 items are going to go into your new athletic director toolbox?
Well, it's a great question. You got me thinking here, and I'm sure there's lots of things that athletic directors would like to have in that toolbox. But from my life experience and from my perspective, I think there's 3 areas that athletic directors today need to make sure that they understand. First one probably is hiring practices, so HR related issues. We know about the security issues, we know about background checks, but how about personalities? How do you hire someone that is philosophically aligned, that is going to be a good leader for you? And I realize it's difficult. There's a lot of shortage of coaches, shortage of good people. I think sometimes we hire people for the wrong reasons because they're the only available candidates. So with HR would be hiring and training component. All right. So that's the first one. The second one would be a marketing component, would include in the tool how to use social media for positive, right? How do you connect? Maybe it's for hiring. Maybe it's how you build your brand as an athletic program that attracts good candidates, that attracts athletes, that can communicate with parents, the crazy parent syndrome, that lets them know why you're making decisions. And I understand that there's some guidelines on transparency. We don't want to open up the door and let them know everything that goes on behind closed doors. But I think communication is really important. I think social media is a great aspect. So you have HR and hiring, you got social media. And then the third thing I think would be understanding career development. All right. Where are kids going today? What are they interested in? I live in Philadelphia, Jake, and I live in a community that has a lot of younger people. And I noticed a couple things. One is they don't like to go to the office, right? They don't like to go to the 9-to-5 career opportunity. They want to be independent. They want to be entrepreneurial. They like technology. And I think as athletic administrators, we're educators first and foremost and leaders. And so the third tool I would give them would be some life skills course about how can they develop athletes, high school kids in particular, and give them guidance as to what careers are out there. So those would be the 3. The fourth one, which I know you're going to let me say, would be my course and my educational product. And I will say that during this 2-year period, what I've learned is all the things we talked about, how NIL has been distorted and how real NIL has not been taught. And so to help in that cause, I wrote a book. And the book is called NIL for All. It's available on Amazon. It's a paperback. It's a 30-minute read. Costs $20. I would advise every athletic director and administrator and coach at the high school level to read that book, invest $20, invest 30 minutes, understand what young people are thinking today and what the opportunities are. And I think it ties those first 3 tools all together in terms of leadership of young people. So NIL for All on Amazon. Go to the Players NIL, follow me. If you'd like to invest in our curriculum, we have 50 individual lessons over the 5 pillars. They're animated digital cartoons. So they're 2 to 4 minute videos that are fun and easy and exciting. We have badges, gamification, and these animated videos that make it easy and fun to learn about how to build your personal brand and take advantage of this new opportunity.
Boy, it sounds like another really cool resource. Go and give out that website one more time.
The Players NIL, and our book is called NIL for All on Amazon.com.
Well, Mark, thanks so much for sharing with our listeners today, and all the best moving forward in this crazy world of NIL. We're gonna have to get you back on maybe later this spring. Give us an update on how things are going across the country.
I would love that, Jake. Thank you very much. And to your audience, I appreciate you taking the time and listen.
Mark Koesterer, the Players NIL. Make sure you check out the website and check out the book as well. For our listeners, we appreciate you tuning in. And just a reminder, we always upload the Zoom recordings to the Educational 80 Podcast YouTube channel. Come back next time for another great interview and just about every day for new content on the Educational 80 Podcast. We'll see you next time.